The sun shone brightly over the grand palace, casting a warm golden light on the crowd of excited guests. It was a day of celebration, a day when the universe would witness the union of two powerful empires. Princess Alara, the beautiful and graceful heir to the mighty Altrian Empire, was about to marry Prince Alden from the Varillian Dominion. Their marriage would bring peace and strength to both empires. And the wedding was to be the most extravagant event the galaxy had ever seen. Guests from every corner of the galaxy filled the palace, their colorful robes and elegant jewelry creating a stunning display. Music played in the background, filling the air with a soft, melodic rhythm. The royal guards stood at attention, their armored forms glinting under the sunlight. The hall was grand, decorated with the finest flowers and shimmering tapestries. It was a wedding fit for royalty. Everything was going perfectly. Princess Alara walked slowly down the grand aisle, her heart filled with both excitement and a touch of nervousness. She had met Prince Alden only a few times before the wedding, but their union was a political alliance, a marriage of duty rather than love. Alara had been taught her whole life that this was the way of the royal family, sacrifice for the good of the empire. Today, she would fulfill her duty and marry a prince she barely knew. As she approached the altar, her eyes glanced over the guests, nodding politely at those who watched with eager eyes. She had never been one to enjoy the attention, but today was not about her. It was about her people, her empire. Her mother, Queen Selene, sat proudly in the front row, beaming with joy. This union would secure their future, and Alara could only hope that this was the right choice. When Alara reached the altar, she stood beside Prince Alden, who smiled warmly at her. He was handsome, with dark hair and a regal air about him, but Alara could not feel the same spark others might have felt. She had been raised to believe that love was a fleeting emotion, one that could not be relied upon. Her duty was her purpose, and that was what mattered. The priest began the ceremony, his voice steady and calm, reciting the words that would bind Alara and Alden together. The crowd held their breath, waiting for the moment when the princess would say her vows. All so traditional, so predictable, yet Alara felt a strange unease in her chest. She wondered if there was more to life than duty. Could there be something else, something beyond what she had been taught to believe? Just as Alara was about to speak her vows, the doors to the grand hall suddenly burst open with a loud bang. The sound of footsteps echoed across the marble floors, causing the priest to pause mid-sentence. The guests turned to see a figure standing in the doorway, his silhouette tall and imposing. It was a man and outsider, a soldier, dressed in the simple but well-worn uniform of the Terran Federation. His appearance was not part of the plan. The guests gasped in shock. Princess Alara's eyes widened as she looked at the man. His dark, intense eyes met hers across the room. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a face that seemed both kind and hardened by experience. He was not royalty, nor was he dressed in fine clothes like the others. Instead, his clothes were practical military, with the markings of his Federation visible on his sleeve. His presence in the palace, at the heart of a royal wedding, was unexpected, yet Alara felt a strange pull in her chest. What was this man doing here? The soldier stepped forward, his boots making sharp sounds against the floor as he moved closer. To the altar, Alara's heart raced. This was not part of the plan. The wedding was supposed to be a peaceful and happy occasion, a moment for her people to celebrate their future. But now everything was uncertain. The soldier's gaze never left hers as he walked with purpose. His steps were steady, calm, but his presence was undeniable. There was an air of quiet power about him that seemed to command attention. The guests murmured amongst themselves, confusion filling the room. Why was he here? Is he a part of the wedding ceremony, or had something gone terribly wrong? Lyra's mind raced. She had never seen this man before, yet there was something about him that felt familiar, something about him that made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. As the soldier reached the center of the room, he stopped. He stood tall, his posture straight, his eyes still locked onto Alara's. The wedding had come to a complete halt, all eyes on the mysterious stranger. The priest, unsure of what to do, cleared his throat and looked to the princess for guidance. Elara's heart beat faster. She didn't know what this man wanted, but somehow she knew she had to act. The wedding was supposed to be a union of two powerful families, a union that would bring peace to the galaxy. Yet here stood a soldier, someone, from a distant federation, disrupting everything. Was this a sign? Was the universe trying to tell her something? The crowd grew restless, their whispers growing louder. The tension in the air was palpable. Elara took a deep breath, her eyes never leaving the soldier. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. In that instant, everything changed. Her whole life, the plans laid out for her, everything she had known seemed so far away. The princess took a step forward, her voice steady, but filled with uncertainty. "Who are you?" she asked, her words breaking the silence. The soldier's gaze softened, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something more than just duty. "I am Liam," the soldier replied, his voice low but clear, "and I have come to deliver a message." The guests fell silent, their eyes shifting from the soldier to the princess. The wedding was no longer. The tension in the room was thick, the silence heavy. Elara stood frozen in place, her heart pounding as she stared at the soldier in front of her. His name was Liam, and though she had never met him before, she felt an unexpected pull, as if something deep within her recognized him. His presence was powerful, and yet there was a calmness to him that made her feel like everything was about to change. Liam stood still, his posture strong and confident. He wasn't fazed by the crowd's whispers or the royal court's shocked expressions. He was there on a mission, and whatever had brought him to this moment, he was determined to finish it. His eyes locked onto Elara's, and for a brief moment, it was as if the whole world had paused. Elara was aware of the eyes of every guest in the room, but her attention was entirely focused on Liam. The prince at her side, Prince Alden, seemed lost for words, and the priest, unsure of what to do, stood awkwardly in the background. Everyone was waiting for her to speak, but Elara had no idea what to say. Why had Liam interrupted the wedding? Why did he feel so important in this moment? "Princess Elara," Liam said, his voice steady, but there was a hint of urgency beneath. I have important information for you, something you need to hear." The princess looked around, unsure if this was some kind of joke or an elaborate distraction, but the look in Liam's eyes told her that this was no joke. She could feel it in the air, a strange tension, like the calm before a storm. There was something serious at play here, something bigger than the wedding or the political alliance it was supposed to create. Taking a deep breath, Elara turned to face the guests. She was the princess, the heir to the Altrian Empire. She had been trained for moments like this. "Please, everyone," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I must speak with this man." With that, Elara motioned for Liam to follow her. The crowd murmured among themselves, but no one dared to interrupt the princess. As they moved away from the altar, Elara led Liam toward a quieter part of the grand hall. Her mind was racing what could be so urgent that it would interrupt. The most important day of her life? Once they were away from the prying eyes of the court, Elara turned to Liam. "Now, explain yourself. Why are you here, and what is this message you claim to bring?" Liam took a moment before speaking. His gaze softened, as though he was choosing his words carefully. "Your Highness, I'm not here by choice," he began, his voice low. "I was sent here with a warning, something that could destroy everything you know." Lara's brow furrowed. In confusion, "What do you mean? What could possibly be more important than the future of our empires?" Liam's eyes darkened, and his expression grew serious. "There is a threat, a growing power in the galaxy that is planning to attack both your empire and mine. The wedding, your union with Prince Alden, was meant to be a distraction. While everyone celebrated, the real plan was to strike, to catch both our forces off guard." Elara's heart skipped a beat. This was not what she expected. A distraction? The royal wedding had always been a symbol of peace and unity, not a trap. She had heard of the rising tensions between various factions, but she had never imagined they would be so bold, so ready to strike at the heart of her people's power. "Who is behind this?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Who would do such a thing?" "The Draxian Collective," Liam replied grimly. "They have been building their forces in secret, waiting for the right moment to strike. The wedding was supposed to be that moment. But I've been tracking their movements for months. I knew something was wrong. So I came, hoping to warn you before it was too late." Alara felt a chill run through her. The Draxian Collective was known for their brutal tactics, their desire for control over the galaxy. They had never been a true threat until now, but with their growing strength, they could easily destroy everything Alara had worked for. Everything her mother, Queen Selene, had worked for. The wedding, the union with Prince Alden. It was all suddenly meaningless in the face of such a powerful enemy. "What do you want me to do?" Alara asked, her voice quiet but resolute. She felt the weight of her responsibilities bearing down on her, but she knew one thing for sure: she could not ignore this. It's not when the very future of her empire was at stake. "I need you to trust me," Liam said softly. "The Draxians are already in position. They're preparing to attack within hours. If we don't act quickly, we'll lose everything. I can help you, but I need your trust. Together we can fight back." Alara stared at him, her mind spinning. Trust him? She didn't even know this man. But there was something in his voice, something that told her he wasn't lying. He wasn't here for fame or glory. He was here because he cared, because he knew the stakes. And somehow, deep down, Alara knew she couldn't ignore him. She had been taught to trust her instincts, and her instincts were telling her that Liam was someone she could trust. For the first time, she felt a spark of hope. There was a way out of this, a way to protect her people. "I will trust you," she said, her voice steady. "But we need a plan. I cannot act without knowing what I'm walking into." Liam nodded. "We don't have much time. I've already sent word to my commanders. They'll be here soon. We'll need to gather your forces, contact your allies, and prepare for battle. This will be the fight of our lives." As the words left his mouth, Alara felt the weight of the situation settle in. The wedding, the prince, the alliance, they all seemed so distant now. Her future was no longer about politics or royal duty. It was about survival, about saving her people, her empire. And as Liam stood before her, ready to fight beside her, Alara realized that this was the beginning of something much bigger than a royal. The noise of the wedding ceremony had quieted, but the tension in the room was palpable. Guests were whispering among themselves, clearly confused and uncertain about what had just happened. Princess Alara's eyes were fixed on Liam as he stood beside her, his presence commanding attention. For a moment, the world seemed to disappear around them. All she could focus on was him, the soldier, who had disrupted everything. "I never imagined my wedding day would turn out like this," Alara said, her voice almost a whisper. She was trying to process everything, but it was hard. The chaos of the moment had left her mind spinning. Liam gave a soft chuckle, though it was strained.
"Oh."
"No one expects a wedding to turn into a battle briefing," he said. His smile was brief, but there was something about it that made Alara feel slightly more at ease. She had seen many soldiers in her life, but none quite like Liam. There was something calm about him. "Despite the urgency of the situation, I didn't expect it either," Alara replied, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But you said we don't have much time. What exactly is it that we're up against?" Liam's expression shifted to seriousness. "The Draxian Collective," he said, his voice firm. "They've been waiting for this moment. The wedding was the perfect time to strike when the focus would be on peace and unity, not on defending ourselves. The plan was to catch both your empire and mine off guard. But now we know, and we can fight back." Alara nodded, taking a deep breath as she processed the weight of his words. She had never imagined that something as simple as a wedding could be a trap, but the reality of the galaxy's politics had become clear. She had grown up hearing about the threats from across the stars, but never did she think that her people would face one so near, one that would challenge everything she knew. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Alara asked, the question slipping from her lips before she could stop it. She hadn't meant to sound accusing, but the question lingered between them. Hanging in the air like a heavy burden, Liam's gaze softened. "I didn't want to interrupt your life," he said.
Ow.
"You're the heir to the Empire. Your duty is to lead, not to deal with the dangers I face. I've spent my life in the shadows, fighting the battles no one else sees. But when I realized the scale of this, I couldn't stay silent. I knew you needed to know." Lara met his eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel like the princess, the heir to a powerful empire. She felt like a person who was caught in a storm much larger than she had ever imagined. "I don't know what to do," she admitted quietly, her voice almost breaking. "I've been trained my whole life to be a ruler, to make decisions for my people, but this feels different. Not sure I'm ready for this kind of responsibility." Liam took a step closer to her, and for a moment they stood in silence. He wasn't sure what to say, but he knew he had to speak. "None of us are ready for everything. You don't need to have all the answers right now. What matters is that you're here. You're willing to fight for your people. That's all anyone can ask for." Lara looked up at him, her eyes searching, his face for something, some sign that he believed in her. And she found it. It wasn't just in his words, but in the way he looked at her, as if he saw something within her that she had long forgotten. "I don't know if I'm brave enough," Alara whispered. "But I know I can't ignore this. Can't pretend that everything is fine when the galaxy is falling apart." Liam nodded slowly. "You don't have to do it alone. I have allies, and I'll be by your side no matter what. Together, we can make a difference." Lara felt a small sense of relief wash over her. For the first time in hours, she didn't feel so alone. Her world had been turned upside down, but in Liam, she saw a glimmer of hope she hadn't realized she was missing. He wasn't just a soldier from another empire. He was someone who believed in her, who believed that together they could face the dangers ahead. As they stood there, the sound of footsteps approaching interrupted the moment. Lara quickly wiped away the few tears that had gathered in her eyes, trying to compose herself. It wasn't the time for weakness, not with so much at stake. Her mother, Queen Selene, arrived with a group of royal guards. Her regal presence filled the room, and though she looked concerned, there was also a glint of pride in her eyes when she saw her daughter standing beside the soldier. "Alara," the Queen Selene said softly, her gaze shifting between the princess and Liam. "What is going on here?" Alara took a deep breath before speaking. "Mother, this is Liam. He came to warn us about an attack. The Draxian Collective is planning to strike at our empire, and it's happening sooner than we expected." Queen's face grew serious. "I see. This is worse than we feared." She turned to Liam. "And you are sure of this?" Liam nodded. "I have evidence, and I've already sent word to my commanders. The attack is imminent. We don't have much time." The Queen's eyes narrowed, and she glanced at Alara, her expression softening. "Then we must prepare. The Empire cannot be caught off guard. We'll need to call on our allies, gather our forces, and strategize for the coming battle." Alara felt a surge of determination rise within her. Her mother's words sparked something deep inside her. This was her moment. She wasn't just a princess who had to marry a prince to secure peace. She was a leader. She had a duty to protect her people. "I'm ready," Alara said, her voice steady. "Let's fight back." Liam smiled, and for the first time, Alara felt like she was not alone in this fight. The sun had set, leaving the sky bathed in shades of deep orange and purple. The grand palace, once filled with joy and celebration, now felt heavy, its halls echoing with the weight of impending danger. Alara stood by the large windows of her chambers, gazing out at the distant stars. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and decisions. The wedding had been abandoned. The alliance with Prince Alden was no longer her priority. And now she had to face a much bigger challenge: the Draxian Collective. The threat was real. Liam's warning had opened her eyes to the harsh reality of the Galaxy 1, where peace was fragile, and enemies lurked just beyond the horizon. She had spent her life preparing for a future as the ruler of the Altrian Empire, but nothing could have prepared her for the chaos that had erupted. The attack wasn't just about her wedding. It was about her people, her family, the very survival of her empire. Leia turned from the window as the door to her chambers opened. Her mother, Queen Selene, stepped inside, her presence as regal as ever. The queen's face was calm, but Alara could see the worry in her eyes. It mirrored her own feelings. This was a moment neither of them had ever prepared for. Alara, Queen Selene said softly, "I know you are troubled, but we must make decisions. The Draxian threat is real, and we can't waste time." Alara nodded, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I know, Mother, but how can we prepare for a battle like this? How can I, a princess, lead an army against such a powerful enemy?" Queen Selene approached her daughter, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are more than a princess, Alara. You are a leader. You've always had the strength to guide our people, even if you didn't see it before. I've watched you grow, and I know you have what it takes." Alara met her mother's eyes, her heart swelling with both pride and fear. She had spent years being taught how to lead, how to rule with wisdom and strength. But ruling an empire was different from leading soldiers into battle. She had never been trained for this. "But I'm not like Father," Alara said quietly, her voice almost breaking. "He was a warrior, a fighter. I'm not. I don't know if I can do this." Queen Selene's expression softened. "Your father was a great leader, yes. But he also understood that leadership isn't just about strength. It's about making difficult decisions, about caring for your people, and about having the courage to face the unknown. You have that courage, Alara. You've always had it." Alara took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Her mother was right. She had faced challenges before, but none like this. This was different. This was about more than politics. This was about her empire, her people, and the future of everything she held dear. "I want to help. I want to fight," Alara said, her voice firming with resolve. "But I don't know where to start. I don't even know who to trust." Queen Selene nodded. "You trust the ones who have always stood by you, the ones who are loyal to our empire, to our people. We've already sent word to our allies. They'll respond. And Liam, he's not just a soldier. He's someone who has fought on the front lines. He knows what to do." Alara felt a surge of hope at the mention of Liam's name. He had been the one to warn her, the one to pull her. From the path she had been walking, he had shown her that there was more to life than duty. And now, he was a part of this battle too. "I'll meet with him," Alara said, her voice steady now. "We need to make a plan. We need to gather our forces, prepare for whatever the Draxians have in store." Queen Selene smiled softly, pride shining in her eyes. "I knew you would find your strength." "You're ready, Alara. Now, let's make sure your people are ready too." As Alara stepped out of her chambers and walked through the palace halls, she could feel the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. The once vibrant corridors now felt empty, as if the life had been drained from them. The palace had always been a symbol of strength and unity, but now it felt like a fortress awaiting a siege. Alara's steps were purposeful as she made her way to the war room. It was time to stop hiding behind tradition and expectation. It was time to face the reality of the galaxy. The future wasn't something she could plan from a throne. It was something she had to fight for, something she had to earn with every choice she made. When Alara entered the war room, she was met by Liam and several of her most trusted advisors. They all stood around a large holographic table, displaying star systems and enemy positions. Liam stood at the head of the table, his expression focused. He had been working tirelessly, preparing for what was to come. "Alara," Liam said as she entered, "we've been reviewing the Draxian movements. We don't have much time. They'll strike soon, and we need to act." Alara walked to the table, her eyes scanning the holographic display. "What's our plan?" Liam gestured to the various locations marked on the map. The Draxians have divided their forces into 3 main fleets. They're aiming to strike at the heart of both the Altrian Empire and the Varillian Dominion. We need to unite our forces and hit them before they can launch their full-scale attack. Alara nodded, her mind already working through the details. "What can we do to stop them?" "We need to move quickly," Liam said. "We'll need to secure our outer territories and prevent the Draxians from breaking through our defenses. But we also need to act decisively. If we wait too long, they'll overpower us." Alara's eyes met Liam's, and for a moment, she saw something in his gaze, a spark of determination that matched her own. "Then we fight," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We fight for our people. We fight for our future." Liam smiled, and for the first time, Alara felt a sense of calm wash over her. She was no longer just the princess. She was the leader her people needed. The next few days were a blur for Princess Alara. The grand palace, once filled with the sounds of laughter and celebration, now echoed with the sounds of preparations. Soldiers marched through the halls, strategists huddled in the war room, and the quiet hum of urgency filled every corner. The Draxian threat was imminent, and Alara knew that the battle for her empire was about to begin. Alara stood at the edge of the balcony in her chambers, gazing out at the distant horizon. The stars twinkled in the dark sky, each one a silent reminder of the vast universe she was sworn to protect. The weight of the responsibility on her shoulders was heavy, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. Her people, her empire, depended on her to make the right decisions. Liam had been by her side every step of the way. He had been a soldier for much of his life, and his experience had proven invaluable. They had spent long hours together, mapping out strategies and preparing their forces. Alara had learned more in the past few days than she ever thought possible. She had always believed that being a leader was about ruling with power and authority. But now she understood that leadership was about making sacrifices, about standing strong in the face of fear. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, the door to her chambers opened, and her mother, Queen Selene, stepped inside. The queen's presence was always commanding, but today, there was a quiet strength in her eyes that made Alara feel both comforted and nervous. "Alara," Queen Selene began softly, "it's time. Our allies are in position, and our forces are ready. The Draxians will strike within the next few hours. We need to make our move." Alara turned to face her mother, her heart racing. "I know, Mother, but I can't help but wonder. Are we ready? Can we truly defeat them, Queen?" Selene walked over and placed a hand on Alara's shoulder. "You've prepared for this moment your entire life. The courage you have within you is the strength of our people. You've already shown that you are ready. Don't doubt yourself now." Alara took a deep breath. Her mother's words were a reminder of the responsibility she carried, but they also gave her the strength she needed. Though she had never wanted to be a princess bound by duty, she had dreamed of freedom, of a life where she could follow her heart. But now she understood that true leadership wasn't about living for oneself, it was about living for others. "I'm ready," Alara said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Let's do this. For our people." Queen Selene nodded and smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "We will win this, Alara, together." The war room was filled with the sound of voices and the constant clicking of holoscreens. The leaders of the allied forces had gathered, and Alara could feel the weight of their eyes on her as she entered the room. They were waiting for her to speak, to give them the orders that would determine the fate of their people. Liam stood at the center of the room, his sharp eyes scanning the tactical display. As soon as he saw Alara enter, he looked up and nodded. "Your Highness, we've made the final preparations. Our fleets are in position, and we're ready to strike." Alara walked toward him, her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. She took her place beside him at the table, where the holographic map displayed the positions of the Draxian fleets. The Draxians had been clever. They had split their forces into 3 groups, each positioned to strike a different part of the empire. If they attacked all at once, it would overwhelm Alara's forces. But if they could strike first, they might be able to prevent the Draxians from gaining the upper hand. "Here's the plan," Liam said, pointing to the map. "We'll send a small strike force to engage the Draxian fleet in the outer systems. That will draw their attention and give us time to launch a full-scale attack on their main fleet. Once we have them distracted, we move in with everything. We've got..." Alara studied the map, her mind working through the plan. It wasn't without risk. The outer systems were far from the heart of the Empire, and there was a chance they could lose contact with the main fleet. But she knew they had no choice. If they waited too long, the Draxians would strike first. "We don't have time to waste," Alara said firmly. "Let's move forward with the plan. We need to stop them before they get any closer." Liam's eyes met hers, and for a moment there was an understanding between them. They both knew the stakes. The success of this mission would determine the future of their people. Hours later, the battle began. The sound of the alarms filled the palace as Elara's forces prepared to launch their attack. Her heart raced as she stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching the holoscreens that displayed the status of the fleets. The tension in the air was palpable, and Alara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was her test, the moment she would either rise to the challenge or fail. "We're in position," Liam said, standing beside her. His voice was calm, but there was a fire in his eyes that told Alara everything she needed to know. He was ready to fight, and so was she. The command was given, fleets engaged, and the battle erupted in the vastness of space. Lara watched as the ships of her fleet launched into the fray, their powerful weapons lighting up the darkness. The Draxians had not expected such a strong response, and for a brief moment, Alara felt a sense of hope. Maybe they could win this, but the fight was far from over. The Draxians fought back with fierce determination, their advanced technology making them a formidable enemy. Lara's forces were holding their ground, but the battle was still uncertain. She had to keep her focus, keep her mind sharp. There was too much at stake. "Keep fighting," Alara whispered to herself. "For the future of our people." As the battle raged on, Alara knew that the outcome of this war would not just shape her empire, it would shape her future. Though she was no longer just a princess. She was a leader, and the galaxy was watching. This part continues the build-up to the battle, with Alara stepping into her role as a leader and making the critical decisions that will determine her empire's future. The battle had been raging for hours. The space around Alara's fleet was filled with flashes of light as weapons collided with shields, and explosions lit up the darkness of space. The Draxian forces were strong, but Alara's fleet was holding its ground. The sound of orders being shouted across the comms echoed in the control room, and the tension in the air was thick. Every decision Alara made now would impact the lives of countless people. Alara stood in the command center of the flagship, her eyes fixed on the holographic map in front of her. She could see the battle playing out in real time. Ships moving in perfect formation, laser blasts lighting up the starry sky. Despite her earlier doubts, she was starting to believe in their plan. Her forces were strong, but the Draxians were not going down without a fight. "Your Highness?" "The outer fleet is holding their position." Liam's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood beside her, his face grim but focused. "We're making progress, but we've lost several ships in the outer ring. We can't afford any more casualties." Alara nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of their losses. Every life mattered. Every ship destroyed was a blow to the people they were trying to protect. But they had to press on. "We can't stop now. The Draxians are just getting started. We need to keep pushing." Liam agreed, but there was something in his eyes, something Alara hadn't seen before. "We need to be ready for their next move," he said, his voice lower now. "They're going to try something big. I can feel it." Alara's gaze returned to the holographic display, her mind racing as she tried to anticipate the Draxian strategy. The enemy had been unpredictable throughout the battle, using tactics that were as ruthless as they were clever. Alara had a feeling that they had one more trick up their sleeves. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Then we'll be ready," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "We need to fortify our position and prepare for whatever they throw at us. I won't let them destroy our empire." Hours passed, and the battle showed no signs of slowing down. The Draxians, relentless in their attack, had begun to push back in some areas, gaining ground on the outer fleet. Alara's forces were stretched thin, and the reality of the situation was starting to set in. She had to make a decision. Would she pull back and regroup, or would she take a risk and go for the final blow? In the heat of the battle, Ilara's thoughts turned to her people, to everything she had worked for. The alliance, the peace her parents had built, all of it was at stake. But Ilara knew she couldn't back down now. She had chosen to lead, and that meant making the tough calls. She turned to Liam, her eyes steady and determined. "We need to launch everything we have, now." Liam hesitated for a moment, but then his gaze softened and he nodded. "Understood. I'll give the order." Ilara watched as Liam relayed the command, and moments later, the fleet sprang into action. Every ship, every soldier, was about to give everything they had. The final stand had begun. On the battlefield, chaos erupted. Ilara's fleet moved in. Perfect synchronization, launching a full-scale offensive against the Draxians. The ships fired their weapons, sending wave after wave of laser blasts toward the enemy. The Draxian ships retaliated with equal force, and for a moment, it seemed like the two sides were locked in an endless struggle. The battlefield was a blur of light and sound, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and the hum of energy. Shields. Ilara could see the damage from her position, the ships taking hits, the flashes of explosions lighting up the dark void of space. It was all happening so fast, and yet Ilara felt strangely calm. She had made the decision. All she could do was trust in the plan and in her people. The outer fleet, still holding their ground, began to make a push forward. The Draxians had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. Ilara's fleet, with its fresh reinforcements, moved in to cut off the enemy's escape routes. It was a trap, and the Draxians were walking right into it. But then, just as Ilara thought they had the upper hand, the unexpected happened. The Draxians launched a massive surprise attack, one that Ilara had feared. A large portion of the enemy fleet, previously hidden behind a nearby asteroid belt, came crashing into the fray. It was a final, desperate move, a tactic meant to overwhelm Ilara's forces and turn the tide of the battle. The Draxians were throwing everything they had left into one last push. "Hold your ground." Ilara shouted into the comms. "Do not let them break through." The sound of battle intensified as the two sides collided once again. Ships maneuvered through the debris, exchanging fire with deadly precision. Ilara's forces fought with everything they had, but the Draxian fleet was relentless. Their ships, though smaller, were faster and more agile. Ilara's had the advantage in the chaos. Ilara's heart raced. Was this it? How it would end? But then, through the fog of battle, Ilara saw something that gave her a glimmer of hope. The Draxian command ship, a massive vessel at the center of their fleet, was struggling. It was taking fire from multiple directions, its shields flickering. As it tried to stay in the fight, if they could disable that ship, the rest of the Draxian fleet would fall. "Ilara." Liam's voice came over the comms, his tone urgent. "We have a chance. If we focus fire on their command ship, we can break their lines. It's our only shot." Ilara didn't hesitate. "Do it. All ships, focus fire on the Draxian command ship." Now for a moment, there was a brief silence. As the ships repositioned, then with a coordinated strike, Ilara's fleet opened fire on the Draxian command ship. Laser blasts and missiles rained down, striking the vessel's shields and weakening its defenses. Finally, with a massive explosion, the Draxian command ship erupted in a burst of light, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The rest of the Draxian fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. Ilara's forces pushed forward, their victory hard-earned but undeniable. As the last of the Draxian ships fled into the darkness of space, Ilara stood in the command center, watching the retreating enemy forces. Her heart still raced from the adrenaline. But there was a sense of relief that they had won, that they had survived. Liam stood beside her, his expression unreadable, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "We did it," he said simply. Ilara nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "We did." The war was not over, but they had won the first battle. And for the first time in a long while, Ilara felt that, despite everything, her people had a future. This part builds on the climax of the battle, where Ilara makes the tough call to push her forces into action and leads them to victory.